Oh god, you wouldn't belong getting Frostbite.
Hey, so a bit of a different intro, not the initial intro for this video, but I thought this was more interesting, and I just had to explain it. Okay, so a fun thing about doing these kind of videos on YouTube is a lot of the time you will get requests, obviously. People will be like, can you beat Skyrim with the flame spell? Can you beat Skyrim with the spark spell? Can you beat Skyrim with whatever, folly? And a lot of the time people will request runs you have already done. Okay? Which, that's fair. YouTube's a fickle thing. Not every time does your video appear in everyone's sub box, not the recommended. And I've been doing this for like 5 years, so not everyone's seen every video. That's fine. And I noticed a lot more comments over the last 6 months or so. People being like, when are you going to get to that Frostbite? Skyrim's only Frostbite run. And I thought, I already did that. I did that last year. I did that last December. It was a Christmas video. And eventually I saw enough of them that I started doubting myself. I was like, did I do that video? I did. I never uploaded it. I never uploaded the video. This is all the footage from last year. You can see the dates are American, so it's 2024, December the 12th, the 2nd. So the 2nd of December, 2024, at 3:36, I started recording this, and then I finished it on the 5th of December, 2024, last year. And I was completely dumbfounded of how did I forget to upload a whole video. The video is done, by the way. I am recording this like right before I put it up. There was a little cut there. That's because I accidentally swore, and I can't swear this early in the video. So yeah, all of this has been done for well over a year, and I just missed it. How do you forget to upload a video? Well, I think what it was is I started working on the Oblivion with only the staff of the Everscam video in December. Like, I finished recording this and then immediately started working on that, and I think I just, in the middle of working on that, I just completely forgot to upload this. And it's mental, because I'm always like there first thing for the videos to reply to comments. I can't believe I just forgot. So yeah, better late than never. I suppose. So yeah, I went in and rewatched the video. The only thing that I have changed is the intro. I cut the intro out and I'm putting this in this place. The intro was just going with the basics, just talking about what does the Frostbite spell do. It's it's the frost equivalent of the flames and the spark spell. It's nothing special, but the main difficulty is going to come from the fact that, or the tediousness will come from the fact that many things in Skyrim are resistant to frost magic. Like Draugr and Nords, for example, only take half damage from frosted spells, so it's going to take longer. But yeah, that's all really that was said in the original intro, so I'll just cut it and put this in. So in the video, if there are things I am saying that have already happened, like for example, I know near the end I mention doing the Staff of the Everscamp video because there were rumors about the Oblivion remaster releasing in January this year, 2025. Which obviously that was recorded a month before. We now know the remaster did not come out in January, it came out in April. But there's a couple of little bits like that may not line up. And the original intro had a lot of that. It was me talking about how the last video was the Caltraps run. It was redundant. So yeah, there might be a couple of things throughout like that. So don't comment. That's the reason why it's like that. Or do comment. I like the engagement. This intro has went on long enough. I'm probably going to cut bits of this down to begin with because it's way too long. But yes. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. And I'm definitely going to upload it this time. To fight fire with fire, so to speak, even though I am doing the exact opposite, I'm also choosing to be a Nord today. If I'm going to be stuck slowly whittling down the health of Draugrs and the like, then I too may as well be able to shrug off as much of the cold as possible. Bretons would also not have been a bad choice due to their natural immunities to all forms of magic. Nothing too classy for my guy today, I just made the typical Nerbit that I make in most. Pretty sure this is a near 1-to-1 in looks with one of my first ever Skyrim playthroughs, so that's neat. I give him a suitable ice-related name, and we can be on our way. Also, no, the Nords do not start with the Frostbite spell, so I'll need to run through the Helgen section without attacking. No issues there, mind you, done this plenty of times before. Just side with Hadvar for quickness due to getting the key for the doors, and then while jogging for the exit, get hit with our one and only Crash This Run. May as well sweep it under the rug right off the bat, rather than have it linger throughout the run. Anyway, back to it, I run through Helgen, grabbing what I believe to be the most expensive items, and then begin making my way for Riverwood. I tickle the Mage Stone on the way, so my destruction will increase faster. Making it to Lucan, I sell him just about everything bar the robes on my back, and then purchase the Frostbite spell tome from him so we can get started. As of right now, the spell does 8 points of health and stamina damage per second at a cost of 14 magicka per second. With the robes and hood combo we snagged from one of the cells in Helgen, this means we can emit a constant spray of chilly air for about 10 or 11 seconds. No time like the present, so it's off to Bleak Falls to see just how good or bad this spell will be. My first two opponents are not resistant to ice damage, and as a result, Frostbite tears through them in moments. Much like the other novice spells, there is a slight hint of damage over time after an enemy is hit with the spell. In other words, it's probably more beneficial for me to just rapidly mash the triggers as opposed to holding them down, as that way I will use less magicka, but also still apply the brief DOT. That said, the dual streams of pure frost magic from my palms looks way cooler than me doing some sort of interpretive dance routine involving jazz hands, so don't be surprised if I just swap back and forth between the two at random. I get my first brief taste of what combat against Nords will be like. For now, it's not too bad, but it's clear they take longer to put down. Could prove to be a hassle once they're higher ranks that aren't just normal bandits. The giant wounded Frostbite spider is the first creature that causes me any real hassle, mind you. Although I can simply back out of the room and blast it with magic, as there's no way it'll ever be able to fit through this small opening. Oddly enough, it doesn't seem too resilient against the cold. I mean, with a name like Frostbite Spider, you figure they would be near immune to the spell of the same name, but I guess not. Well, it goes down thanks to my cheesing, we reach level 2, and can take the first rank in the destruction tree. This allows all novice spells to be cast for half their normal magicka cost, so now it's only 7 points per second, which is substantially better. There aren't many useful perks for us in this tree if I'm being honest, so I'll just go over them when we hit the requirements. Honestly, most of my perks will probably be going into enchanting, light armor, and the speech tree. Dealing with Arvel before he can regain the use of his limbs, we quickly run into our first gang of Draugr. The normal variants have about the same health as the Nord bandits I fought previously. Makes sense, they are literally just undead Nords. The restless variety were clearly going to take a bit more punishment. Fortunately, that problem took care of itself. Destruction level ups are flying in at this stage, so much so I managed to level up again already and reach level 3. I save the level for a bit and wait until I reach the end of the dungeon with the mini-boss. I know the Overlord obviously has more health than the common rabble infesting his tomb, but I'm honestly not quite sure if he has a high tolerance to my weaponized brain freeze. I could look it up on one of the many Skyrim wikis or some such, but I think a fun part of this is figuring stuff out for myself. Anyway, here's the reason we saved the level up. We blast him down with all the magic that I have at my disposal, then we can briefly pause, pop the level up, and in doing so, completely restore all of my health, stamina, and of course, magicka. Small side note, I love it when RPGs make it so level ups fully restore all of the player's stats. Let you play around with your next inevitable level up, and when it could be the best to get that free full restore. Back to the fight, fully refilled, along with me using the perk point to unlock the dual casting perk, I can quickly, efficiently, and stylishly freeze away the last of the Overlord's health bar. I then grab the Dragonstone, but more importantly to us his enchanted weapon, and then return the claw back to Lucan for an easy 500 gold. With the money I get from selling everything that wasn't nailed down in the Barrow, I get just enough to purchase a mage backpack for an extra 75 carry weight and 20 points of magicka, as well as a set of the Novice Robes of Destruction. Wearing these will bring down the cost of Frostbite to 6 points per second. I'm sure you can see where this is going, what with me not so subtly mentioning the enchantment skill over and over again. Like clockwork, I head back up the road to Embershard because XP is like a drug, and right now I need a fix. Doesn't take long to clear the cave, and truth be told, not much worth going over either. Level 1 bandits tend not to lead to interesting encounters. Now it was off to Whiterun, where I briefly made a stop to pretend to help with the companion's giant problem. Barely tickled the man, but it did get my destruction to 30. Thanks to the level I'd saved, I was able to use a perk point to snag Augmented Frost, thus bringing Frostbite's damage to a respectable 10. And now I will not be taking any more perks from this skill tree until I manage to double my current destruction skill to 60. This is due to the only other relevant perks being the second rank in Augmented Frost that adds more damage, as well as Deep Freeze that allows frost spells to paralyze weak enemies, both not being available until I hit that requirement. Now, in the Palpatine video, I showed off a frankly rather busted way to get max destruction in less than 10 minutes, but like most glitches and exploits, I try to only use them once if I can, so we'll be foregoing any cheesy grinding methods and will instead be building up our magical prowess the old-fashioned way. Entering Whiterun, I do a quick run around to grab all of the miscellaneous quests that offer free skill ups so that I can do them later at my own pace. I then head to the keep, and while the Jarl and everybody else freaks out about how to deal with the impending dragon attack, I make a start on breaking down most of the enchanted gear that I procured to get a few enchantment levels. I specifically do not scrap my robes and hood though. We shall do that later when I either find suitable, fashionable replacements, or can make my own attire that is vastly better. Anywho, first dragon fight. Fun fact, if you manage to hit an airborne dragon with an ice spell, it will land shortly after. The implication being you have frozen its wings and it can no longer fly efficiently. Kind of like when your hands are particularly cold and it makes it harder to play with a controller. It's a cool trick, pardon the pun, and it essentially makes the Frost Breath shout the wish equivalent of Dragon Rend. The problem here is that Frostbite, despite being a beam of icicle energy, does not extend all that far, and as such it is rather difficult to hit Murmelnir with it in this fight. So I have to kinda just wait until the guards either damage him enough, or he throws me a bone and decides to land next to me. Takes a bit, but that does happen, and once he is within range, things quickly go my way. Granted, I ran out of magicka and had to guzzle down a few potions, but in the end, I was able to come out on top. For style points, I even seemingly won a beam struggle against him. Returning to the Jarl, he gives me his worthless axe, which I then break down immediately into some XP. Figured, since I'm in the area and with no real ideas outside of the main quest, that I could start hitting up some of those tasks for the townsfolk. Naturally, I do Amren's first, as while I may not be making use of the skills he teaches me, they all go towards inevitable levels, so they're all good in my book. This time his sword has ended up in the halted stream camp. Had some good luck with this one, seemingly no Nords in sight, plus they were still all base rank bandits. The sole exception of course being the chief at the end, who is always an orc in here if I'm not mistaken. Thanks to him being a bit of a lumbering idiot obsessed with power attacks, I can effortlessly create some distance between us both so that I can quickly cool him off. I grab the sword, along with all of the loot, which mostly consists of mammoth tusks, and return it to Amren for my just rewards. Thanks to grabbing the tusks, I can also turn one over to Isolde to complete her favour and get a nice boost to my speech skill. Honestly, that could be quite important if I end up just buying most of the magical resources I want for enchanting. Due to just getting said speech increase, I also help Carlotta out by telling Mikael to stop trying to riz her up, and he reluctantly agrees. With this gold and some of the other tusks, I can trade them in for a ring and an amulet that boosts my overall magicka pool. I know it's more efficient to just focus on enchantments that reduce the cost of specific schools, but for now, this is the best we've got. I figured that if I want to commit to the whole enchanting thing, then a quick way to get more items to dismantle is by just running through some short caves and dungeons, as 9 out of 10 times they will always have at least one magical object, either in the end chest or on the final boss of the dungeon itself. Besides, even if it ends up being an enchantment I've already come across, I could then just sell it for cash or soul gems to make more random magical gear, sell those, and rinse and repeat. So first up is White River Watch. Nothing out of the ordinary, it's just bandits. However, the big bad at the end always has a set of gauntlets on him that fortify your two-handed skill by 20%. I know this because, as you're all aware, my preferred playstyle is big two-handed swordsman, so this is normally my first stop on any casual playthrough of mine for a quick damage boost right off the bat. Well, this time he decides not to make use of his overpowered handwear and instead attempts to shoot me with arrows. I think this may have genuinely been a smart play by the AI, as while I mentioned that the frost spell also drains a target's stamina, it can also slow them down exponentially if you keep up the onslaught once said stamina is drained. You know exactly what I'm talking about. How many times in the early game have you been sprinting towards a Draugr or Ice Mage only to find that you're out of stamina and doing the slow run animation from Halo Combat Evolved? So I think he switched to the bow because he knew he would not be able to approach me quick enough with the sword. Or maybe it was a dumb as shit play, who can say. I returned to the city to sell my valuables and made one of the best purchases of the run. Bellathor was selling a Ring of Minor Destruction. I wore it for now, but its true strength will come when I break it down later and can start enchanting all of my relevant gear with it in the hopes of drastically reducing the cost of Frostbite. I do a few more rounds of random cave exploration, extermination and extraction around Whiterun before proceeding on the path towards Windhelm, Iverstead and eventually the Greybeards. Ended up wandering into a cave and fighting about 4 or 5 trolls on the way. I figured they'd be difficult to kill, what with them regenerating health unless they're hit with a fire spell. But surprisingly, the damage over time of the Frostbite spell essentially negates all of their passive healing anyway, so really the element made no difference. My next opponent of worth was a giant, and I'll be honest, I don't know if it's the stamina thing I mentioned before or a glitch of some kind, but just look at how much of a joke the frost spell makes of this poor guy. He is literally moving at about a quarter of his base speed. Granted, he can still swing and hit me like nothing is wrong, so I need to stay out of his range, but as you can imagine, that's not very hard to do when dude here is fighting through an invisible pile of syrup. Naturally, this leads to a very easy kill. I've honestly slept on the frost spells for a long time in Skyrim due to just how many enemies are resistant to it. I feel like I've been missing out on a pretty fun variation of magic until now. During my exploration, I ended up stumbling into the abandoned prison. On its own, it's nothing worth talking about, but this is where I found that all ghosts are just immune to frost damage. No point trying to fight them, so I just leave. Not a huge annoyance by any means, but I imagine that puts some dungeons and caves completely off limits, as I know a few have high level ghost enemies as their end fights. For example, at one point later in the run, I was making my way through Whiterun, only to come across yet another ghost I had to exercise to get past. With no way to get around, as the traps of the dungeon were also ineffective, I had to leave empty-handed. Back to the task at hand, I kept travelling and was mildly concerned when I came across an abandoned giant's club, with the only creature nearby being that of a dead goat. Coming to the conclusion that the missing giant was clearly banished to another realm by some sort of wrathful goat god, I quickly left the area should I too succumb to such a fate. Came across a few more and attempted to warn them about what I just witnessed. Sadly, they seemed more interested in flattening me into a rug to wipe their feet on. I repaid this kindness by swiftly dealing with them and stealing their toes, as that is a very normal thing to do. They had some substantial gear in their possessions, so more money and enchanting XP was abundant upon my next return to Dragon's Reach. By this point, I had an enchanting skill of over 40 and was able to start making some worthwhile destruction focused gear, assuming I had the Grand Soul Gems to back it up. Farengar will sell them filled to you for around 1500 gold, so they ain't cheap, but as long as I buy the lesser and petty gems from him as well, use them to make enchanted weapons I can then sell, I should be able to keep a consistent flow of gold to fund my creations. With everything in place, I use it to make a necklace that reduces the cost of destruction spells, bringing the magicka per second of Frostbite down to 3. This was when I went back to exploring for a while, and when I traversed through Whiterun like I mentioned before. Knowing how that went, we will skip ahead until I return to Whiterun. I'm level 10 now, so of course everybody is coming out of the woodworks to greet me. This has me picking up the quest for the Alakir, as well as Durak trying to force me into starting the DLC. I decided to help Sadia in her side of the quest for no other reason than there is more things to kill, and frankly I'd like to get my destruction to 60 as I've never made use of the added paralyze feature of the frost spells, and I'm deathly curious if it breaks combat like I think it will. On the way to deal with Kamatu and his band of misfits, I figured it would be fun to put down more giants, as well as test my mettle against their pet mammoths. As you can imagine, it was the slowest of slogs, but we got there in the end. The giants were falling prey to their bones being frozen beyond repair, whereas the mammoths are so bad at pathing that they never truly figured how to get close enough to do any real damage. The fight had a brief intermission when a dragon showed up and joined the fray, however. During the chaos, I also spied Meridia's beacon in one of the nearby containers. Like a normal person, I spat in its general direction and proceeded to leave it there for some other unfortunate soul to discover. With this encounter over with, I won't lie, it kinda made the following fight with Kamatu and his men a tad underwhelming. Heck, some of the bandits in the cave on the way to them were more intimidating if I'm being honest. The problem with this battle against all the Alakir is while yes, you may be grossly outnumbered, it is also incredibly easy to just lure them back the way you came and take them all out one at a time in the confined spaces of the tunnel. Doing so, I just blast them all down without a second thought. Naturally, Kamatu is a bit tougher than the rest, but when I was backing up, I accidentally fell down to the central area of the cave. Rather than him quickly following, he instead very slowly began making his way down the same way I had to use to make it to him in the first place. This gave me ample time to recharge my magicka, and as such, I had more than enough to easily win the fight. We get the reward, enchant, and now we're down to 2 per second. That's probably overkill as is, but I wish to get it down to 1. Sure, you can get it to 0 eventually, but it's not really needed. I go out adventuring again, this time going north of the city to see what awaits me. Lo and behold, more giants. This one is so disgusted by my strategy that he bends down to throw up in a nearby basin. Worried that the giants are going to catch on to my minor genocide of their kind sooner or later, I decide to tamper with the crime scene. I do so by filling the bowl with giant's toes. This will make the others believe he is some sort of freak that sucks on the severed toes of his own kind, and therefore understandable why he was slain in broad daylight. Just over the rocks here we can find a locked Dwemer gate that leads to a lift. Fun fact, this is the same lift in the room where you get the Elder Scroll later in the main plot. We shall put a pin in this location for now, and return later with a little Wensleydale if you catch my meaning. Yet another giant falls to being just a little too chilly, and then to mix things up a little, I run headfirst into the nearby Silverhand so that I may hunt the hunters. Majority of the Hand are no tougher than your run-of-the-mill bandits. Unlike bandits though, those silver swords sell for a good chunk more than iron, so I swipe every one of them up, plus I can enchant them for free levels, and who doesn't love that? On the topic of items being worth a pretty penny, on my travels I stumbled onto Hobfall's Cave. Other than reminding me of Fable, it was one of the earliest areas modified by the Creation Club, and as I have shown off in a few prior runs, now contains some absolutely beyond broken spell tomes, which we of course will be selling. Full enchanted elven armour and jewellery gets down to 1 per second, boots and gauntlets provide extra magicka and shock resistance. About as strong as I can get for now, I venture off in the general direction of the Greybeards. Detours aplenty on the way, but one of them was intentional, and that was paying a visit to the Atronach Stone. It doesn't completely stunt your magicka regen like in previous entries, rather it just slows it down. Considering we have lowered the cost of Frostbite to 1, that doesn't necessarily affect us all that much, so in other words, we can just reap the other benefits of the stone, those being a larger magicka pool and a 50% chance to absorb any spells cast at us. This works wonders against dragons when you lack many resistances, well, assuming you get lucky on the coin flip. I didn't really get to test how effective it was in the next dragon, because he never managed to hit me with his breath. Plus, he was using frost anyway, so it wasn't going to do much. I think Frostbite managed to drain all of the dragon's stamina, however, at least if this flying animation is anything to go by. It's rather uneventful from this point, as I just slowly circle him until his final drop of blood freezes. A few bandits, thieves and whatnot, but all it leads to is me climbing up the not-so 7,000 steps. You'd think the Frost Troll would be a slog, but you would be wrong. Sure, it's not as good as it was on the normal trolls, but it still chips away at him faster than you would believe. All I do is spray him down, then once he closes the gap, sprint past him to make him whiff his attack, and then continue where I left off. Like before, the natural health regen isn't strong enough against my chilly fingers, so I come out on top. Greybeards, yada yada yada, you know the drill, Ustengraf time. I flex my newfound knowledge a little by wiping out 3 more frost trolls on the trip. Seriously though, why aren't they nearly immune to this? Is it a bug? The trolls may not get me, but the random revived bandit in the tombs sure does. No clue why he hits so hard, but alright. Next go and we tackle the necromancers first. After all, deal with them and you take down their spawn too. I was able to evade the overly aggressive minor bandit by using the strongest tool in a player's arsenal, a jump. This got the distance I needed to finish the final caster, and in turn, re-killed the bandit before he goes mining for gold in my skull. Now it's on to the Insomnia Draugrs. Everyone is now highly resistant to the cold, so it's a war of attrition. My defenses are better, what with the absorb, but it still takes a while to defeat even one of them. At the very least, so long as I don't let them in melee range, I should be fine. Last, but certainly not least, is yet another giant frostbite spider. Unwounded this time, however. The little ones might be pushovers, but Big Mama here very nearly swallows me whole as soon as she hops down. My physical defenses are lacking, and I just about managed to make it out alive, mostly down to the fact that she, once again, cannot fit through this tiny doorway, and didn't seem interested in her ranged attack for once. I heal up with some potions, get a few breezes off from safe distance, then once she backs away, I run out to deal the final blow. In the process, my destruction and light armor both increase. Still 7 levels off being able to afford the last 2 destruction perks we want, but now with a light armor of 30, I could at least get some better protection. Of course, the horn ladder then points us to Delphine, and from there, Salok'nir, a very intimidating dragon, I assure you. After that spectacular landing, I just keep up the spray, while Delphine gets his attention, resulting in yet another easy dragon encounter. Fingers crossed Alduin 1 is just as straightforward today. Thalmor Embassy now, however, on my way to meet Malborn, I instead got wrapped up in the Civil War and ended up joining the Imperials. Clearing out the fort is child's play, outside of that one Ustengraf bandit, they don't scare me. I also couldn't join the Stormcloaks as their initiation requires you kill an Ice Wraith, something which is physically impossible given that they are immune to frost damage. Another positive of doing things this way, more things to kill means more loot to sell. Some of them even carry magical armor and weapons for more enchanting XP. This time the gold is spent on something more worthwhile, that being destruction training. A little expensive, but worth it, I assure you. To procure enough gold to get 2 more levels to get to 60, I went about shattering Grell all the Kind, causing a run-in with Astrid, and from there turning her into an ice pop so that I may get the quick reward for wiping them all out. Once more, I am sidetracked and figure 2 destruction levels isn't that much grinding, so once more, I end up running away from my responsibilities and instead begin hunting down more giants and mammoths to sate my appetite for experience. The lumbering lummoxes are far too slow to keep up once the spell has drained all their stamina, so picking them off one after another is no hassle. I then find the one mammoth who was dumb enough to get separated from the herd and naturally pick on him until I hear that wonderful little jingle to let me know all of my grinding was worth it. Had the foresight to save my last 2 perk points so I can take both perks right away as opposed to having to choose between them. Frostbite now inflicts 12 damage per second and paralyzes low health enemies. Some are immune to the latter, mammoths for an example. Not to worry, I still need to purge the Brotherhood, so that's a wonderful place to test it out. Alright, so I can't quite decide if it's incredibly busted or incredibly useless. It oddly balances a thin line between them. Like, it will proc 100% of the time on your opponents when they have low health, assuming they aren't immune. This means they will always be taken out of the fight before death, guaranteeing you are the victor. That said, it triggers when they are so unbelievably close to dying that the chances of you losing the fight by that point are slim to none. The only reason would be if you were already incredibly low on health yourself. Does that make sense? Like, it is good in theory, but when it activates, your chances of losing were already slim to none. It just makes them non-existent after the fact. Anywho, you can see it in play on the members of the Dark Brotherhood, and once the last of them has been frozen solid to the cold hard floor, I return to Barrow to obtain my paltry sum of 3,000 gold. Woo! At the very least, I put the blood money to good use as I purchase a full set of light orcish armour, and then reapply with ever so slightly stronger versions of the enchantments I already had. Alright, remember that Dwemer lift from before? Well, I went back there and with a well-timed whirlwind sprint, blasted through the door and made my way for the scroll. Except that's not possible right now as I have yet to grab the Allspark from Septimus. Shit. Well, I'll have to help the Imperials then, I suppose. We're after the crown, of course, which means we gotta blast through a small army's worth of Stormcloaks. Typically, it's a strength in numbers thing when it comes to the Civil War, although given that they are all Nords, it's taking ever so slightly longer than it should, thanks to them negating half of what I'm throwing their way. Still get by unscathed though. Final stretch of the tomb is faster thanks to the Legion backing me up. Good thing too is I barely tickle the Scourge. I just focus on the fodder while my allies deal with the mini-boss. Well, I do still run in to steal the kill in the end thanks to some assistance from the stun. With the crown in hand, all I've got to do is return it to General Tullius. Although, there is some method to my madness. Mainly that a lot of the Legion's forces are made up of Imperials, therefore I don't need to worry about them soaking up more damage than is necessary. For those of you who are annoyed by this betrayal, do not fear, the game punishes me for it almost immediately. This leads to the assault on Whiterun, and as expected, the Imperial soldiers are blown away with ease. The Whiterun guards put up more of a fight given their race, but not enough to stop us from storming the castle. Like before, I mainly focus on the rabble, while Ralof and Galmor break the Jarl. I do step in to help once I'm able though. Thanks to paralysing Balgriff at the end of the fight, I get this oddly cinematic shot which looks like he's surrendering on his deathbed.
That's enough. I surrender. I surrender.
Ulfric is pleased with our new city, and as a reward, me and Ralof are sent to slaughter an entire fort. Oh joy! Simple enough, although right after is where I get my comeuppance. After the fort is ours, I need to speak with Ralof, which will then send me back to either Galmor or Ulfric to finish the quest. Thing is, he is nowhere to be found. Strange, I thought, so I checked the map. Looks like he's up around Whiterun. Again, odd, but not uncommon for NPCs to wander off, so I make my way to him. It seems he is at the Whiterun military camp. This started to set off some alarm bells, as that is a temporary fast travel point that is only supposed to exist during the assault of Whiterun. When I arrive, he is waiting, weapon in hand, and when I attempt to speak with him, he just keeps saying generic Stormcloak soldier lines. I do some reloading and all the other typical Bethesda workarounds, but let me just cut to the chase and tell you, none of them worked. So I put a pin in the Civil War and just went back to the main quest and get sorted with the embassy infiltration. Nothing special about the break-in, I just get your man drunk as per usual. The High Elves lost their race debuff in Skyrim that made them weak to magic in every prior Elder Scrolls title, so I get no benefit here from my frosty frontal assault. That said, as I have mostly been contending with Nords and Draugr, it feels like I am chipping through them faster regardless. On top of that, they don't seem very strong physically, plus the Atronach Stone was doing work absorbing their incoming spells, and really I swept through them all a hell of a lot faster than I ever intended. Rolindel was the only minor annoyance. His shock spells could drain me of my magicka, and if that happened, I'd be done for. Fortunately, I have reduced the cost of Frostbite so much that even with him nearly sapping me dry, I never have to stop casting. I then grab the notes, and for good measure, bully another frost troll. Honestly, from here until the very first fight with Alduin was rather uneventful. Esbern was saved, Alduin's wall did not break for once, the climb to Parthenax consisted of me just avoiding the ice race, and then after a short stint in the sub-zero waters, got the cube from Septimus and grabbed the scroll thanks to my earlier helping of cheese. Alduin's got them heavy magic resistances, which always makes a run like this an absolute delight at this stage. He is also clever enough to primarily use his fire breath, as he can tell I'm a Nord and therefore will not waste his frost breath. The plan initially was to try and stay behind him, figured I could stand a better chance away from his mouth, and could easily dodge the tail slam. Kinda works, except for the fact the slam has a small AoE, so getting clipped by it is all too easy. It's one of the contributing factors to my first death, as a matter of fact. Attempt 2, I still want to stay out of the way of his flames naturally, but the tail is also a little too dangerous. I figure the best option is to try and stay in the sweet spot between the wings and the tail. That way I also won't get backhanded. Basically, I just need to try and keep behind his feet, but not so close where I'm within tail whipping range. Solid plan, works well. I overthought it though, as I did not account for Skyrim changing its rules on the fly. What I mean is, I think the tail's hitboxes somehow glitched out this go around. Sure, I think sometimes mere Parthenax managed to guard break him out of it with enough damage, but other times you can see that thing comes crashing down right on top of me, and I either take little or next to no damage when compared to the last try. I shouldn't complain about the game making things easier, but it just feels bizarre. Anyway, Alduin's down but not out, and because the Civil War still won't budge thanks to one soldier who refuses to stop fighting at the Battle of Whiterun, it means it's time for the Peace Council. Skyrim continues to be held together by Silly String, as despite ousting him from power, Bulgriff is still considered the Jarl of Whiterun, with Revolver Ocelot here just awkwardly hanging around, becoming more senile by the minute. Shockingly, this does not mess up the council and softlock me, and I'm able to get him, Tullius and Ulfric to attend without anything snapping in two. I do something else while the NPCs bicker, we come to some sort of arrangement, and now it's off to capture and tame a dragon. One minor annoyance about the whole rail-off thing I forgot to mention is that it has completely removed the fast travel icon for Whiterun, so every time I have to make my way back here, I have been hoofing it from the camp. It's not a big deal, but it is starting to get to me. The brief dragon imprisonment goes off without a hitch, and then the two of us fly off into the sunset, by which I mean I spend longer than I would have liked, slogging through the Draugr. You'd think the Overlord at the end would be a nuisance, but far from it. I drained most of his stamina early on, which led to him running at half speed for the fight, until I got him low enough to completely shatter what was left of his old bones. Tsun plays out in a similar fashion, only he manages to get a few good hits in before conceding. All that leaves is the final Alduin encounter, and if you've seen it once, you've seen it 1,000 times. The heroes three grab his attention and basically emulsify the poor lizard, while I stand to the side and steal the kill as only a Dragonborn can do. Here's hoping when the Elder Scrolls 6 finally releases in the year of our Lord 2030, they give the game a final boss that's actually somewhat of a challenge. Or at the very least don't give you multiple invincible allies to do the work for you. With that, the day is saved, the Civil War continues to not work, finishing the game and proving yes, you can indeed beat Skyrim with only Frostbite. Just not the Civil War questline apparently. Glad to finally have that finished. Not in like a, oh, finally knocked that one out, but in a nice way, like it's good to have dedicated runs on all the novice spells finally under my belt. This was easily the most tedious one of the bunch, if that wasn't clear. The Spark spell / Palpatine being the easiest due to so few things having shock resistance, and the Flame spell run falling somewhere in the middle. My next run is probably going to be an Oblivion video. It'll probably be a shorter, simpler one. It's not the Daedric Artifacts run. My plan is to save that for when that inevitable Oblivion remaster drops. With some new leaks saying it could be as soon as January, that run could be out sooner than you think. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.